Vomitoreum is perhaps the most beautifully disgusting game I've ever played. Not that many games fit that description. However, in this case, that's a compliment, as that's exactly the art style it's going for. Inspired by the horrifically beautiful artwork of Zdislav Bekinski in the FPS games of the mid to late 90s, Vomitoreum manages to stand out with its incredibly unique visual style. Alongside these inspirations, there is also some drawn from Metroid Prime with its interconnected world and upgrade system, encouraging and even requiring backtracking to progress. This game manages to actually call itself a Metroidvania shooter without feeling like an afterthought. And rare to the 90s inspired shooters is the heavy focus on storytelling and world building, feeling like it's all purposely planned out rather than semi-random locations. I don't want to get into the storyline too much, as it's a new and fairly short game with a constantly changing and progressing story that feeds you new information at the right times, and it wouldn't feel right to spoil any of that well done storytelling. However, I will give you the basis that you get at the beginning of the game to give you an idea of what's going on. Years ago, there was an entity from beyond the sky that landed on the planet, bringing an infectious fog with it. The creature latched onto the ground, seeping its teeth in. The infection it brought turned luscious landscapes to barren wastelands, turned man and animal to horrid monsters. However, there was hope. A great warrior named... How the fuck do you say this name? Umatermedine, with the power of the Sword of Life, Seraphim, led his men against the infection. With help from the Masons who used spells of life to purge the plague from this land, and the demon horrors of Concubath devouring the infection, Umatermedine was able to get to the creature. With a single slice from his sword, the creature fled, and life was brought back to this world. However, the creature came back a year later, even stronger, and with everybody being separated, they were forced into hiding or devoured by the infection. The Masons, however, did not give up. With many sacrifices and failures, they were eventually able to make the perfect monster called the Nephilim. The goal of this monster would be to retrieve the Sword of Life and bring an end to the creature known as the Vomitoreum. You are the Nephilim. From here, you're thrown into the game with no real direction and left to figure it out on your own. A few paths seem open to you, but you'll quickly realize that most of these paths require upgrades that you currently don't have access to, and there's really only one correct path to take. I like this concept in world building immediately, as it doesn't hold your hand and tell you what to do, and you can see right from the start that you'll be coming back to this location later, better equipped to take on these obstacles and progress. This is what takes front and center in the gameplay progression format. Starting off, you're rather weak and only have a pistol, but quickly enough you'll come across your first new tool, a gauntlet that allows you to break certain blocks to progress. And the upgrades just keep flowing from here. It seems like every time you get used to your new upgrades, another one is thrown at you to make you feel like you're always progressing. It's a fun and rewarding gameplay cycle that does a great job at motivating you to keep playing. However, it's still first and foremost an FPS game. So while the Metroidvania aspects are done incredibly well, it's even more important that the gunplay feels good. And I can report that Vomitoreum does just that. The biggest appeal to 90s inspired FPS games is the frantic, fast strafing action with loud and powerful gunplay. And while this game opts for a smaller arsenal than most, what it does with these guns makes for one hell of a good time. You only get 3 main guns in the game: your starting pistol, a shotgun, and an assault rifle. However, to keep these guns interesting, you unlock upgrades for these guns by finding secrets and defeating bosses. This is especially great for the shotgun, which turns into an absolute destroyer of worlds, aka the sawed-off. With insane power and eardrum bustingly loud shots, this thing is the definition of an absolute unit. But even the starting pistol is pretty fun to use. There seems to be no limit to the fire rate, meaning you can shoot as fast as you can click your mouse, making the DPS on this thing pretty high too. Finally, there's your assault rifle, which is a perfectly fine weapon, though doesn't really have any real features to make it stand out amongst the other 2 guns, making it a little bit less fun to use. It shoots fire rounds, but these don't actually seem to ignite enemies, so it's a bit pointless and perhaps would have worked better as the second weapon instead of the shotgun, because once you have the shotgun, you'll never rely on the assault rifle anyway. I will admit, however, that the assault rifle has an alternate fire that I simply didn't use because I didn't notice it until after I beat the game. The movement really helps contribute to the satisfying gunplay as well. As you'd expect from an old school shooter, movement is fast and fluid, plus the early game upgrades of double jump and long dash make for some enjoyable encounters. And with every attack being projectile based, there is a huge reliance on strafing to avoid damage, and I think that's what makes the game a lot of fun in some ways, but is also somewhat of a detriment in others. You see, I like projectile based attacks as they give an opportunity to avoid damage if you're fast enough to dodge, and it allows you to get into the action rather than being forced to stand in a doorway and take enemies out from afar like modern games with hit-scan weapons. However, it causes repetition as well. While this feels fine in encounters against standard enemy fodder, I would have preferred the bosses to change up the formula a bit more. As is, the bosses just feel like bullet sponge variations of existing enemies. While I like that the game has so many bosses and most of them have their own story to tell, It feels a bit disappointing that the actual battles feel completely the same every time. Of the handful of boss battles, only 2 of them ever require you to change up your strategy from circle strafing while unloading the sawed-off. While one of them is fine and I don't really want to talk about in detail because it's very late into the game, the other is a major roadblock that almost made me put the game down entirely. Let's talk about the Whore Sisters. This battle places you against 2 bosses at the same time with 2 wildly different attack patterns. You have the tall, skinny sister who teleports around the outside edge of the arena shooting orbs at you, while you have the fat sister who quickly rushes at you to eat you. Now yeah, it's not too different from the majority of other boss battles either, as you'll still be circle strafing throughout most of it. However, you have to be a lot more careful where you land and the timing of your landing. Some of the orbs the taller sister throws out are very low to the ground, and if you poorly time a jump, you may find yourself landing right on top of these orbs. So the hardest part is just trying to avoid these orbs while the fat sister is constantly charging at you, combined with their attacks being improperly balanced. Sometimes the orbs only do 10 to 20 damage, other times they can do over 100, but even more damning is the fat sister's ability to instantly kill you from full health in about a second if she catches you. I mean, just look at this shit. Oh, and by the way, this is only the second boss fight in the game. And that's the reason I've taken the most issue with this boss. It's by far the hardest, yet it's given to you so early in the game that you're simply unequipped to take this fight on. After quite a few tries, including one of the most painful deaths in recent memory, I was about ready to give up on the game. Luckily, I pushed through and finally beat them, just to not know where to go and jump in some water that killed me with no save point in between. But I did it again, and this time I realized you were supposed to crawl into the mouth of that worm dog hybrid thing, and I've never been more happy to be in something else's mouth in my life. Remember back when I mentioned that the world building felt purposely planned? That extends to the map designs as well. Throughout most of the game, you'll play on a single interconnected map with different biomes throughout, and all of these look great in their own ways. From the concrete heart with the blood river flowing through it to the azure kirkland with its beautiful snowy landscape, though nothing compares to the fungal marshlands. While it's one of the smaller areas, it's about the only place that still looks untouched by the infection. I really like the vibe that this area brings. It makes it feel like there's still hope to save this world. It's reassuring to see places like this compared to so much of the world that looks completely dead. However, it seems like no matter how good a game is, there's always that one section or level that is complete and utter pain. I don't know who keeps thinking this gimmick is a good idea. I didn't like it in the Messenger, and I sure as hell don't like it here. I'm of course talking about the dark caves. I don't know who needs to hear this, but stop taking away the player's vision. God did it to me in real life, and now I have glasses. I don't need it in a game as well. You're tasked with getting through a pitch-black cave system leading into an abandoned railway system, all the while your only source of light is an AI with the intelligence of a newborn baby. The pathfinding of this AI is fucking terrible. It constantly loses you and gets stuck on cave walls, all the while you're getting jump scared by literally every enemy. I mean, have you ever been jump scared while reading shitposts on a subway wall? Secondly, just what the fuck? I'm playing a serious game with dark themes and religious undertones, yet the walls are painted in your private Discord messages. In all seriousness, I'm not actually bothered by this. It's fucking hilarious, but it's just a weird way to be taking out of the moment. My big problem with this area though is just that it's not fun to play. It's poor level design, and with the issues the AI has tracking you, it just makes for a frustrating experience. It's a good thing the rest of the game is so well designed that it makes it worth pushing through, especially because it isn't a very long sequence anyway. One thing I want to touch up on before I end the review is the mood setting. I mentioned it briefly just a bit ago with the dark caves taking away from the mood, but it's something I really want to give credit for. You'll notice playing the game that the soundtrack isn't loud or pronounced most of the time, but rather uses ambience and light notes to set a specific mood. I think this is done expertly, and in combination with the art style of the world, truly puts you in the mindset this game is meant to. And I can't forget to mention the enemy sprite designs themselves. Multiple enemies look and sound like something straight out of hell. Truly, I don't think enough credit can be given for the presentation of this game. In the end, I really liked this game, and despite some bumps in the road, I believe the positives of this game far outweigh the sections I didn't like. For every section that I didn't like, there were like at least 10 that I did, and that's a pretty damn good ratio to me. I think this game does a great job at scratching the Metroidvania FPS itch, especially considering the amount of games out there that I've tried but failed. It's a bit on the shorter end for your typical Metroidvania, but at only $10 it's easily worth it. And one last thing, your mom gay.